Welcome back to Calcio Culture, everyone. This is Vos here as your solo host for the day. Both my co-hosts, both Logs and Mots, decided to call in sick. So I'm trying my hand at a solo episode to give you the content you all deserve as Calcio supers. No promises for a good episode, but we're going to see how it goes. Today, I'm breaking down what has already happened in match week number 10. So we had games on Tuesday and Wednesday. There are a couple more games tomorrow, so I'm just going to give a quick preview of those. And then we're going to round it up by talking about week 11, which is going on over the weekend. But before we get into that, I've got a couple solo quick shouts. Not really my thing. This is usually Logs and Mots, but I just got a couple of them. First off, happy birthday, the legend, Diego Maradona, Serie A legend, football legend in general, just a legend of the game completely. Has really one of the guys that made Serie A what it is today. Somebody that so many fans of the game, players that are playing currently have looked up to, and is really one of those guys that revolutionized the sport, took it worldwide, and accomplished so much for Napoli that they even still look back at as some of their greatest years ever and kind of their place in the world football landscape. So just shout out to Diego Maradona. Happy birthday from up in the clouds. Another shout, we talked a lot about the Ballon d'Or this week, and particularly in how we felt Lautaro Martinez may have been snubbed a little bit. He came out and has said, I expected more. And I think we fully agreed with him. We talked about it on Monday. 7th for him was very much not fair. We thought he should have finished a little bit higher than that. 4 at the lowest or at the highest, maybe even 3, maybe 2, obviously not 1. But we do think this is an unfair snub, and we stand with Lautaro. We think he really deserved it, and the season he had last year really made a good case for the league and for himself, and his performances with Argentina just propelled him to another level. Not that we've seen that, though, this year, but we'll get into that a little bit later in the episode. Another thing I did want to shout out, we've seen it time and time again in the city this year, red cards. It happened again today. It's happening every match day, not even match week. And just want to break you through some of the numbers. We have 24 red cards through 10 match weeks, and I don't even think this is updated as of today. I don't know if it's because our bar for red cards is too low. I don't know if it's VAR era. I don't know if it's more referees not being on the same page in terms of what we're going to deem as a red card offense, but it's just out of control. I mean, part of this is with VAR. If you make contact with somebody's leg at all above the ankle, you're getting a VAR check for a red card. Whether or not it's going to happen and you are going to receive a red is the question mark, but it's going to review. And I think that's part of the issue. Some of this is we still haven't taken into account severeness of that type of challenge. And I'm talking about specifically because of what happened in the Empoli Inter game today. There was a red card for this type of incident. And realistically, it's if there is contact above the ankle, you get a red card. And we haven't really set any rules, or the refereeing body hasn't set any rules in terms of the severeness, injury to the player and that sort of thing. But this is a very slippery slope because I get they're trying to police the game in a way that keeps players safe. But it is insane how many red cards we're getting. And even in this game today, it was immediately, I was like, okay, this is a red card. And I don't think pre-VAR era, we're even having this discussion. So for this one, I don't have a solution. I don't love pointing things out without a solution, but this is a tough one. It does need to get resolved because these change the game. And we saw that to an extreme degree in this Inter-Empoli game today, which I am going to talk about here in a few minutes. But it was 0-0, red card came, complete flip of the script. Empoli really in trouble from that point on. And this has been going on every single week. So I hope something is done about it. And again, I don't have the solution. And then one more shout. Not really new news or anything, but felt I needed to point it out. The table in the league right now is so tight, especially at the bottom, that I feel like I had to talk about it. As things sit, Genoa is in last place on 6 points. Granted, they have a game in hand. From 20th, which is Genoa's spot, 6 points, game in hand, to 13th, there are 3 points separating them. 19th to 13th is 1 point separating them. And this just goes to show how every game has mattered and how every team is in every game this entire season. the relegation battle is continuing to be scary because of everybody is able to pull points off of any team in the league. We'll see if they can maintain this form for the rest of the year and everybody being able to challenge to some of the top teams, some of the mid-table teams. And it's just creating an insane year so far. We've had trouble predicting games. I think everybody has, but it just goes to show how great of a Serie A campaign we've had coming into the year. And as Matza said previously, match week number 10 is really where the season starts. So we'll see who can keep this up. I hope it continues to happen because I'm really growing to love a lot of these teams that are in the relegation battle. And it is going to be sad to whoever goes down to see them go down, but we're just hoping for a great rest of the season on the back of that. That wraps up my quick shouts. As I said, I'm not the quick shout guru. It's really Logs followed by Mott. So only a couple today, but we did have 2 Colpies this week. We did a Colpi di Luna for the Tuesday games, and we did a Colpi di Luna as I'm recording here. It's Wednesday for the Wednesday games. On Tuesday, we had 2 legs hit. Mott's finally on the board. I think it's been 2 months since he hit a leg. He hit the under in the Bologna Cagliari game. He had under 2.5. So great shout out to Mats there. Logs missed pretty miserably in the Verona game. There was a red card in that one, and they didn't really stand a chance from that point. He had Verona money line. They did miss. And then me with maybe the Colpi leg of the century, Kvaratskhelia, anytime goal scorer, absolutely drilled it. That came in at plus 550. So, I mean, that might be the best Colpi hit for a really long time. And I'm happy nobody's here to squash my claim of that. So for overall, Tuesday's Colpi went well. 2 for 3, can't really complain, especially with Mott finally getting on the board. Move on to Wednesday. Today's games went a little bit worse. Only 1 leg. Again, I'm going to gas myself up. I hit it, Atalanta minus 1.5, minus 114 on that one. So 2 great hits for me, in all honesty. Logs had Retegui, anytime goal scorer. Obviously did not happen. A little bit surprising. I actually really liked that bet when he made it. And then Motts came in with another ludicrous, insane Colpi leg, Empoli draw, plus 360. Look, it looked good for a little bit. And then red card, it's over. We all knew it was over. So hopefully Motts can bounce back. But from a Colpi perspective, I'm the king right now. Very simply the king. And now we're going to get into the match week 10 reviews. Before that, I'm just going to take a quick break here, guys, to organize my thoughts as I'm solo. And I'm back from my break to talk match week number 10, the games that have already happened, what has transpired, and there's only one place to really start with the game of match week number 10, Napoli at Milan. Before I get into this, I do need to note, because I think this is what everybody is going to point to when they analyze this game, that Tijani Reinders and Teo Hernandez were suspended. And then before the game, Christian Pulisic was unable to start due to illness. He did appear in the second half. So I do want to get that out of the way. I'm not going to use that as a crutch for AC Milan for what did happen in this game, but it is important to note because those are 3 lock-on starters for Milan. To get into what actually happened, though, Milan lost this game 2-0. And this really, what happened was exactly what I expected to happen. Napoli were going to only defend the entire game and then take their chances when they got them on the counterattack. And that's essentially what happened here. First goal, Romelu Lukaku looks like he's rolling back the years to his Inter days, back at the San Siro. What does he do? Great movement from him to receive a pass in between the center backs, Shaw and Pavlovic in this game. Then wrestles Pavlovic off the ball, throws him to the floor. He was getting shit on by everybody who follows football anywhere in the world, how bad Pavlovic hit the ground. And then just buries one bottom corner. Magnan really no chance. He's 1v1 at this point. And then second goal, I really can't even explain what Milan were doing. Kvaratskhelia received the ball in that area that he always does off the left side of the field. And what does he do? The thing that we know Kvaratskhelia wants to do. He cuts in on his right foot, pretty much unchallenged, and then takes a shot from the top of the box, slots it, bottom corner, and then from then on, pretty much done and dusted. That's the rest of the game. There's a couple of things I do want to talk about in terms of what happened in this game, regardless of what I talked about on Monday, and this going exactly as I planned it. The first one, on the Lukaku goal, everybody was all over Pavlovic, as they should have been, because it was very weak defending. He had dropped off, which held Lukaku onside. And then in his recovery, then gets fucking muscled by Lukaku. And it just a bad, bad situation for Pavlovic. But I do want to take a look at Malik Shaw. Because as bad as Pavlovic was on this play, how Milan were set up, it was very clear that Shaw and Pavlovic needed to be in a discussion as to how they were going to handle Lukaku before the game, during game, after the game. I'm sure they are now talking about this. But on this goal, Lukaku basically faded off of Pavlovic into the space between Shaw and Pavlovic. So Lukaku is then between Pavlovic and Shaw. Pavlovic, again, dropped off to keep Lukaku on sides, which I understand was wrong. But at the same time, Malik Shaw has to notice that Lukaku is on sides. And number two is, this is the only threat right now from Napoli. You need to cover that. Regardless of whether or not it is your responsibility for the goal, you need to help your center back partner. So I didn't really like the defending from Shaw either in this situation, or his recovery speed to go bail out his partner. In this defense of Milan, is just continuing to be the issue. Like, we're now down to Malik Shaw and Pavlovic, who both maybe shouldn't be starting. Granted, Gabbia was also out this game, which I did fail to mention. But now you're down to basically three guys that you're not sure can play in Shaw, Pavlovic, and Tomori. And this is just continuing to become a very difficult situation for Fonseca to navigate. On the second goal, similar but different situation. We go back to Milan's defending. I don't know what they were doing on this play. We had talked about how the Emerson-Kvaratskhelia matchup was going to favor Napoli, but this was just embarrassing from a Milan perspective. I don't know what they were doing. The scouting report on Kvaratskhelia is very much, he wants to get the ball on the left-hand side of the pitch, and if it's there, he is going to dribble in to shoot from the top of the box, shoot from distance, to curl it on the far post on his favorite right foot. So what happens? He's 10, 15 yards outside the box on the left-hand side. Everybody drops off. As bad as Emerson was at defending this, nobody tried to make the play. And I don't understand what they are doing or what the game planning is before this. Because surely Fonseca's saying, don't let Kvaratskhelia do this. Don't let Kvaratskhelia do this. Maybe even double up on him. But that's not what happened. He had a free pass to dribble to the top of the box and just go ahead and take the shot that he wants to take more than anything in the world. And I know he is a hard guy to defend because he's very two-footed, but this wasn't like he was showing anybody that he was going to go on his left and go for a cross. This was telegraphed. And I remember watching it happen and being like, oh, my Copley leg might hit right now because this is what he's going to try to do. And then funny enough, nobody tried to stop it. I literally cannot defend this Milan defending. And I don't know if it starts with Fonseca. I don't know if it starts with the players. But it's an issue that I need to point out, and people need to continue to be on Fonseca and the players about, because this is not okay. Some other things on Milan, as with all the bad things I can say about this game, they did show some grinta. They went down 1-0, and what they do, they went and brought the game to Napoli. They did create some chances. Granted, part of that is how Napoli wanted the game to go. But credit to them for trying to fight, trying to get another goal. But they were unable to. And this is the thing that I've been saying about Milan. I think their new identity is a counterattacking team. And Antonio Conte was not going to allow them to do that in this game. They had a lot of crosses. They had a lot of the ball in the final third. But Antonio Conte is fine with that. And this Napoli defense had 10 guys in the box, basically, when the crosses were coming in. So the stats kind of make Milan look a little bit better and even maybe pass the eye test for how they looked. But Napoli are okay defending in that shape. And when you have 10 guys in the box, it's really hard to score on that. And that's ultimately what was going on. Everybody but Lukaku was going in, and that was it. Like, this is what Conte wants to do. This is what Conte is going to continue to do. He went to the San Siro and got his 3 points. He probably scored more goals than he was expecting. And every team is going to run into this problem. And that is why Conte is so hard to beat and why he's such a good league manager, regardless of what he has done in Europe. This is one game a week, Conte. Mats has been saying it for so long, and I am on the wagon. There is pretty much nobody that can beat Napoli right now. And they are very, very scary. And beyond all of this, I think we've gotten away from on Napoli. We talk about Conte, we talk about Kvaratskhelia, we talk about Lukaku, knowing who all these guys are. It's beyond that now. We have everybody stepping it up. And I think this isn't personified by anybody more than Scott McTominay. And it's a really bad look for Manchester United because Antonio Conte brought him here and then played him higher up the pitch. And now he's just becoming a monster at that number 10 position, especially in this Conte system, because his pressing is so nonstop. It's like how I talk about Victor Osimhen, just a terrible guy to play against. That's what Scott McTominay has become. He presses you intelligently and forces you where Napoli wants you to have the ball. And then beyond that, even he hits you. Like, Scott McTominay's on you because regardless of if he wins the ball, he runs into you to let you know he's there. And then number 2, which I don't think I've ever seen it to this degree, is his press resistance and ability to suck in pressure and then explode out of it is something that I don't even think Antonio Conte expected. In adding that to Zambo Anguissa and then whoever the third midfielder is, adds another level to this team that they didn't have before Scott McTominay is there. And it is amazing to see. This is a guy that I've always loved, so I'm happy he's really thriving now. I thought he was always in the shadows at Manchester United, and I'm finally happy that people are able to see what he's capable of and go beyond even what I had expected. Another guy I pulled out of this game is Billy Gilmore. Kind of like a Premier League dropout, essentially. He had really high hopes when he first came through. Barcelona were trying to sign him, a number of teams. He then went to Chelsea, didn't quite work out, and has slowly fizzled out of the Premier League. What does Antonio Conte do? Identifies him, brings him in. He looks just as good as Lobotka right now. He's just a very intelligent player. And in that role, him and Lobotka can be perfect. Perfect. There is no drop-off in ability or what they are asked to do or in their execution. So this team's continuing to grow. I still think they need to get 1 or 2 more guys in January to get where they need to go. But Antonio Conte has completely turned this player around and turned this team around from what they were last year, and it's great to see. One other important thing that I do want to say about Napoli, the Napoli players, is this was the first time I thought Buongiorno had a very bad performance. On the ball, he looked very terrible, and there was one specific play where he gave the ball away to Yunus Musa, and he probably should have done better with it. But a big takeaway for me is the ability to win against a top-level team with your best defender in Buongiorno playing poorly. This is something that we didn't really expect as a pod, and it was really good to see. And this shows the development of Napoli as a whole. So this was a great game. Antonio Conte, masterpiece. A little bit of Fonseca, still not tactically where he needs to be, though, in my mind, regardless of getting the Yunus Musa start right. Because Yunus Musa was maybe the best player on the field for Milan, which I did forget to mention. He was all over the pitch in the defensive half, middle, final third, created a number of great opportunities and was just very much a great player. And to just finalize or move on from this game, send off a little quote here. Antonio Conte came out after the game and said, "I have guys who are willing to die for the team." And we've been saying it. We could see it in how the Napoli players celebrate, how dedicated they are to the shirt. Now we're seeing it in how Conte is saying it. And this is what Antonio Conte really does at his core. He motivates a group. He gets the noise out of there, and he just turns it into one objective, and that's winning the league. And so far, they've succeeded in that. 10 games in, they are 4 points clear of Inter Milan and 6 points clear of Atalanta, 7 points clear of Juventus. And they look a lot better than all of these teams, I would say. So for right now, they have to be the front runner to win the Scudetto. And unless something changes, that's what's going to happen. Because Antonio Conte is going to continue to just grind out results the way that he does. And in games like this, it's a bonus if he wins. And we talked about it a little bit on Monday's episode. This next month is important for Napoli in their Scudetto run, but it's also important for every other team because they're playing all the top teams over the next month. And all of them need to pull points off of Napoli and not just draws. They need to win to keep the Scudetto chase alive, or we're going to be sitting here beginning of December and we're going to say Napoli's pretty much away with it, and it's done and dusted, and that's it. Moving on from this game, another big game that happened was Parma went to Juventus and didn't go Juventus's way once again. 2-2 draw at the Allianz. From a Parma perspective, this is as good as a win. You went to Turin and you got a point at the Allianz. This is one of the hardest tests of the entire season, especially for a team that was just promoted. This is really unheard of, I would say. And it's insane. This Parma team, regardless of what they've done so far this season, are exciting and they want to win games and they are set up to win games. And this was another great example of that. Granted, there are a couple of negative things. We saw what Parma had been bad at all year in this game. We saw what they've been good at, and that's the ability to beat any opponent or at least score against any opponent. But on the flip side, this has been happening all year. They got the lead and they lose the lead. They had the lead twice in this game. They're up 1-0, then they were up 2-1. And again, they cannot close the game. And I think a piece of this is that they are young players, not used to this situation. But as you grow, you learn how to manage a game better. And there's a lot of top clubs. We point to Inter Milan that still are struggling to manage games. And it is difficult, but this is something you need to figure out to stay in the league, especially in games like this. Granted, a draw at Juventus is a very good result. From a Juventus perspective, you have to look at this game as a loss. You need to win your games at home, regardless of the competition, and especially against the newly promoted team. We are continuing to see them draw, and they're a little bit coming like Bologna. I know Mats is going to hate that, but in games that they're scoring, they're conceding. In games that they're not scoring, they're not conceding. And they're just dropping points left and right. Last 5 games, 3 draws, 2 losses. And we look back at that Inter Milan game last week, they probably should have lost. And if they had lost that game, we're looking at a slightly different take on Juventus, I would say. Granted, they did not. So we can't say that. What I really dislike about this is dropping points at home. In the Serie A, you need to make your stadium a fortress. We've seen how much teams have struggled to win games on the road. And Juventus, who have this legendary, maybe it's not legendary, but world famous state-of-the-art stadium that's sold out all the time, you need to have it be your fortress. And I don't know what is causing this because they are good and we know how good they are. And you can point to the injuries. Yes, Coop Miners is still out. Nico Gonzalez out. There are some key losses in there. And Bremer, which is a big one. And we're seeing that maybe on the defensive side of things. But regardless, for Juventus that holds himself in the light that they do as one of the best clubs in the world, you simply have to beat Parma at home. And there is no excuse for you not to, regardless of how you're playing and regardless of how Parma's playing. And I would have liked to see Juventus really see this as a difficult game, get fired up to go and win it and dominate, and they couldn't. Parma looked better than them. From a positive note, 2 weeks in a row, you were losing the game and you battled back. Like, that is good, but it shouldn't take you being down to wake up and get into the game. And that could be a theme that we continue to see them develop now, is can you motivate from minute 1 to go and get the game? And we were not seeing that right now from Juventus throughout the season. I think the only game we saw that in was their 3-0 wins, which were pretty much walks in the park for them. And I don't think there's any pressure on Thiago Motta, nor will there be at any point this season. I think we're seeing some growth in the team. It's very clear what Motta is trying to get across to these players, which is more than we can say for a lot of the managers in the league. And the second thing on this is Juventus are not a very reactionary club. They're very well thought out in their decision-making. And I think they are seeing what we're seeing, and that, yes, things aren't where they need to be, but Thiago Motta is steering the ship in the right direction. And I do still attribute some of this early season form to learning a new playing style, adjusting to a new manager, and even beyond that. With the number of signings they've made, new players pretty much always take at least a year to acclimate to the country, to the club. You're uprooting yourself. So I give Thiago Motta the benefit of the doubt there. And I do think that this Juventus team are going to get better. And by the end of the year, they will be a lot better. But for me, I still think next season is a Scudetto challenging season for Juventus. And to wrap up on this game, I do want to shout out Mats real quick for sending me a couple notes. I actually watched the Atalanta game, planning on having Mats to lead the Juventus discussion. So I do want to shout out a couple notes he did send me, mainly in Dusan Vlahovic. Mats said it, his words, not mine. Dusan Vlahovic played terrible. I believe it. I'm not all that surprised with all the praise we gave him against Inter Milan in that game. This is what Dusan has tended to do. He'll show up, he'll play well, and then he'll disappear. And it's been an issue since he's joined Juventus. And it's part of the reason that I've kind of been talking about maybe they need to replace him. I think Mats is frustrated with him. I think we're all frustrated in him, knowing what he's capable of. And especially, you would like to see him carry this back to Turin after playing so well at the San Siro, which is one of the hardest places to play in the entire world. So that's going to wrap up my Parma Juventus discussion. To take you guys through the rest of the games that have already happened in match week number 10. Again, we have a couple more games tomorrow. But the other games that happened, Verona lost to Lecce 1-0. Again, a red card in that game, and I'm going to consider this a really bad result for Verona. It's a Verona team that's been very wish-washy since the beginning of the season after they started well. And I was gassing them up. The manager, Paolo Zanetti, he's got some stuff to figure out here because they are spiraling very quickly, and I'm at the point where I'm not confident they're going to win any games. Moving on, Bologna went to Cagliari in Sardinia, very hard place to win a game. They won 2-0. And for me, this was Bologna's best performance of the year, period. They got the lead. They did look shaky once they had the lead. And I think that was some lack of confidence settling in what has happened this year. But they got it together, started to hold the ball, got the second goal, and were able to close out the game. And I don't really remember a time they've done that this year. So that's a big step in the right direction for me. And I'm happy that Italiano was able to get something done here because he was due. Udinese went to Venezia today and ended up losing this game 3-2. This is an extremely bad result for Udinese. They went up to a 2-0 lead and then took a red card, gave away 2 PKs. And very simply, you cannot be doing this against Venezia, who have struggled so much this year, when you, Udinese, have been so good this year. And for me, this is a game you got to get 3 points out of. And this has kind of been a theme of this match week, is teams not being able to close out the game with the lead. We saw it with Inter. And it's difficult. I get it. It's difficult to keep the pressure on, but you need to defend with possession. They got away from that. And I think Udinese are going to be extremely disappointed, even though it was on the road. To not even get a point out of this is terrible. From a Venezia perspective, this is a massive, massive win. I mean, you are now, if they don't win this game, they are in dead last still. And this is a massive game, and I think Venezia have been playing well, but they were a little bit lucky to get away with 3 points in this one, I will have to say. Moving on, Inter went to Empoli, which also happened today. Won that game 3-0, although I don't think that tells the full story. Empoli actually looked very good and were threatening and defending well until they did get a red card. They then got stuck in that shell, and even then they were looking good until Fratesi scored off of like a freak deflection shot that went in. And from there on, that was it. It was done. They lost that game 3-0, and you can't really read too much into this. A red card against Inter, you're in trouble. I will say Fratesi scored 2 goals. That's a guy that can't stop scoring right now. And Lautaro Martinez did get one assisted by Barella. And it was the most emotion I've seen from Lautaro Martinez this season, I think. He was so happy to score that goal, and it clearly meant so much to him. And he clearly cares about Inter Milan, and he cares about having success for the club. So I was happy to see that. And I do hope he gets rolling because it's just great for the league. Last game that's already occurred for match week number 10, Monza went to Atalanta today. This is a game that I watched, hoping to have Mats here to help me with the Juve game. Monza did lose this game 2-0. They looked better than I had expected, but this is just another example of how Atalanta are just capable of overwhelming you. in scoring 2 goals. In this game, they only had 1.15 XG, which is far less than what they usually have in Atalanta, but converting their chances, excuse me. And that has been the issue for Atalanta. I think on maybe every other day, Atalanta don't necessarily put 2 goals in or put any goals in when they have 1.15 XG with what we've seen this year. But this is one Atalanta needed to get the job done. They did. I'm happy about it. I love Atalanta. For Monza, difficult times, but I actually see the ship moving in the right direction. And some of their key players, and Danny Monta, Juric, are continuing to play better. So that's big for me. And I think of all the teams down there, I'm talking about the Cagliaris, the Venezias, the Lecces, the Genoas. Monza is kind of looking the best, in my opinion, although the results aren't necessarily saying it. To take you through the rest of the games that are happening in match week 10, and this is tomorrow. I'm recording on Wednesday, so this will be Thursday when this gets released, actually. Torino is going to Rome to play Roma in the Ivan Juric Derby. This is an exciting one for me because Torino are in decent form. They're looking scary, meeting Roma when they are none of those things. So this is a difficult game. You're going to Rome, and it is hard to win there, but I would like to see Torino bring it to them the way I've seen Torino play this year, and I know they're capable of playing. And Che Adams and Tony Sanabria are both looking great. Ricci in the midfield looking great. I would like to see them be ball dominant in this team and try to really bring it and get the win and don't go from the draw. From a Roma perspective, I think they're stuck with Ivan Juric until at least January. I think it makes sense to just give him the rest of the year, regardless of what happens, because there's no sign that anybody's able to do anything better right now. The bright side of this is you are at home, and the last time you had a big result was beating Udinese 3-0 at home. It's a game where just trend in the right direction. I would like to see a draw at worst. You cannot lose this game. You have to at least get the draw, show that you've squared away the defending that was so bad last week against Fiorentina where you were leaking goals, and just make sure you get something from this. And I'm really looking forward till next week for them to get out of the losing slump and the draw slump when they go to Verona, who are playing much worse than most of the teams in the league, 4 losses out of the last 5. And I would be looking to that game as, okay, let's just get a draw against Torino. They're playing well. And then let's try to bring it against Verona and see what we can do there. But every game right now for Juric, every game for the players, every game for the club that is Roma is massive right now. And it's going to continue to be until they show any type of form, because they haven't. 2 other games happening. Fiorentina going to Genoa tomorrow. Fiorentina is looking to keep that goal fest going against the last place team in the league in Genoa, who have 20 goals conceded in 9 games, which is very tough. No doubt that they'll win that one in my mind. And then last game tomorrow, Lazio going to Como. That's going to be an interesting one. I think this is going to be a puzzle for both teams. And I think that they are both feeling they can win. I do feel very good about Lazio at this point. They've met every test they faced this year. And in the games where they have dropped points, they still haven't looked bad. From a Como perspective, there's a lot going right. And I think they're going to feel they can bring it to Lazio, especially being at the lake, at home. So this should be a good battle. I think this is going to be a chess match. Baroni has continued to surprise me with what he's been able to do with this Como team. And from a Como perspective, Fabregas has had great tactics. So I expect this game to be pretty attacking and everybody's going to be throwing punches, I think, in terms of having the ball, going for goal. So I think this is going to be a very entertaining game. I am still edging Lazio in this one. I just love the way they're playing. But that wraps up match week 10 for us, guys. I'm going to take a quick break again because I've been talking for a while, and then I'm going to be bringing in match week number 11 preview. All right, guys, I'm back to talk match week number 11. First game kicking off, Lecce going to Bologna. For me, the story of this game is going to be Bologna. On Lecce, I have been saying, and regardless of their good result today against Udinese, I'm going to continue to say it. I think they played Verona today. They beat Verona 1-0. I think they're a team that's going to go down. Of all the teams down there, in my opinion, they look the worst, even worse than Genoa, who's in last, albeit with the game in hand right now. So I'm not going to speak too much on them. From a Bologna perspective, this would be a great time to string together a couple of good results because you've had a lot of draws. We've talked about where they've struggled, scoring and then conceding and then not scoring and not conceding. Let's get 2 in a row here. Make it 3 wins out of the last 5. You're at home. This would be a great game for them to get some momentum. I think Italiano really needs it to get his confidence up. I think the team needs it. I think the club needs it. And this is a great opportunity for them to get some points. The other thing that may happen is Lewis Ferguson was available in the game midweek. So I would doubt he's starting, but I would like to see him maybe play this weekend and get some minutes in. That's going to be a massive piece. And they've been missing him very heavily. It was such an important part of the team last year. And beyond that, it would be nice to see another Scottish guy come in and play really well in the league as they've kind of been flying, particularly in McTominay, Billy Gilmore, and Shea Adams. All have been phenomenal. Juventus is going to Udine to play Udinese. This is an intriguing game for me. I have nothing written down. I have no notes because I have no idea how this is going to go. Both of these teams have shown their inconsistencies. I could see Juve going and kind of playing in some sort of shell or maybe trying to bring the game to Udinese and having this useless possession. From an Udinese perspective, they'll be phenomenal and then they'll do what they did today. Take a 2-0 lead, take a red card, and then go on to lose the game. You're at home. So from an Udinese perspective, I would like to see them play this one safe. You're in 7th in the league right now. You're playing Juventus, who, yes, they are, regardless of their form, they're a very good team. Just button down the hatches, try to get a result. I don't, off the back of the loss, 3 losses out of the last 5, just get a point here. Don't try to do anything crazy because this game could get out of hand and this could be a bounce back game for Juventus. So I would like to see Udinese just do something sensible here and just try to get a result. Monza is going to be hosting Milan. And for me, I thought about this game quite a bit because I didn't really have an opinion. And then the more I thought about this and what I've been seeing from Monza, being at home, I think they're going to try to bring the game to Milan. And they're going to shoot themselves in the foot doing that. I've been talking about it. I've been preaching it. Milan is a team that wants to play in transition. I don't think Monza have enough firepower to overpower Milan's defense. And this is just going to feed into what Milan want to do. And they're going to have a lot of counterattacking opportunities. And I believe they're going to win this game. And for Monza, I don't know. That's my prediction. I could be completely wrong, but that's what I think is going to be happening. Game of the weekend, Atalanta going to Napoli. Massive game. This is another game in that run for Napoli where they're playing a lot of the top teams in the league. This one is very different from the Milan game. Atalanta are probably a different matchup in terms of tactical setup than anybody you're going to play throughout the year. For me, I think this is going to be a Napoli win pretty easily. It will be interesting. But the way I see this going is like a 4-2 Napoli win. Because Napoli and Antonio Conte are going to continue to do the thing that they do, and that is defend very well and then counterattack hard. In Atalanta, of all the teams, is one of the easiest teams to counter because of that man-to-man marking system that they play and how free they are offensively. So when you counterattack them, and we see it regardless of who they're playing, it's literally against everybody. When Atalanta lose the ball, they'll be like 3v3 at the back. And Napoli are so good at counterattacking that they're going to exploit that better than a lot of teams. When you're going Kvaratskhelia, Politano, Lukaku, those are 3 really intelligent players and also very skillful players. And I think it's going to hurt Atalanta. At the same time, Atalanta are going to create opportunities, which is why I think this is going to be a high-scoring game, regardless of how defensive-minded Antonio Conte is. Gasperini isn't going to change what he's doing, and it's more so just going to be a question of how many goals can Atalanta get. I don't think it's going to be more than what Napoli will get against them, though. Moving on, Torino is going to be hosting Fiorentina. This is another really interesting game. Both these teams kind of similar area of the table, similar in points with the way Fiorentina's playing. And granted, we'll see how they do tomorrow. This should be a game they go and bring it to Torino at the same time. Torino are going to want to try to win this one at home against Fiorentina. So I think this one will be interesting. I expect this to be, there's goals in this game. This is going to be a fight. They're both going to try to win it. I don't think anybody's going to be happy with a draw. So this is one to tune in for. Hellas Verona is hosting Roma, which I mentioned before. This is a game where I think Roma have to be looking to as let's notch 3 points here. Verona is kind of in disarray right now. And from a Verona perspective, this is kind of paradoxical because Roma should be looking at this as let's right the ship and beat them. And for Verona, it's we're at home. Roma's in disarray. Let's try to win it. I don't have a lot of confidence in either of these teams to score on each other. So this could be a 0-0 or a 1-1. I don't know. But it is an interesting one to watch because both teams need a win and at minimum need a result. It could be cagey. That's my concern with this. I think they're both going to be scared to lose. But moving on, Inter Milan is hosting Venezia. Very simply, this is a bounce back game for Inter. I literally don't see a scenario where Venezia get any points out of this game, even if Inter went down to 10 men. Like, Venezia are not good enough to go to the San Siro and beat Inter Milan. And regardless of how bad Inter have been, not even bad, their flaws, they're too good to drop points in this game. And I don't see any hope for Venezia. Keeping it rolling, Parma is hosting Genoa. The rest of these games, not just this one. Really big game for the relegation battle. As I mentioned at the top of the episode, it is very tight down there. Genoa in last as we speak right now. Again, game in hand. They're playing tomorrow. Parma in 14th, only separated by 3 points right now. And this is pre-tomorrow's game, seeing what Genoa does. And as we go through the rest of the games here, Como is going to Empoli. Como level with Parma. Empoli only 2 points clear of them. It's just so tight down there. And in this Como-Empoli game, I think this is going to be a really good puzzle for both teams again. Como are going to want to win and feel that they can bring it to Empoli. And at the same time, we're seeing Empoli kind of evolve right before our eyes. They went from this very tough, defensive, no goals, conceded, no goals scored, to being a little bit more expansive in trying to win games, and especially at home against a mid-table team in Como. Both of these teams are going to go for this game. And this is going to be a really good one in my mind. I think there's goals in this, and it's going to be an interesting puzzle battle. Last game happening, Cagliari is going to Lazio. And for me, I feel really good about Lazio in this one. They've been playing so well, and Cagliari, as hard as they've been to play, I think Lazio is going to be too much for them in this game, especially at home. I think Lazio as a team are feeling really good about themselves. And you can get Cagliari. Cagliari at home is much better than Cagliari away. And they have stolen results here and there this year, but I don't see that happening in this one. This has got to be a Lazio win in my mind. And with that wraps up the Match Week 11 previews. And as I'm solo, I got to introduce everybody's favorite segment,
Colpi di Luna.
It's the Colpi time. And because I'm alone, I'm doing all 3 legs myself. I got legs from Mots and Logs, but fuck that. I gotta get a couple more wins on the board. Hopefully. To take you through my bets, you can probably predict some of these based off of this episode. I've got Napoli money line at home against Atalanta. I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I'm saying Napoli are going to win this one. I don't see it going another way. And I'm taking them. I really feel good about Napoli in this one. The way they're playing it's set up to beat Atalanta in a lot of ways is kind of the way I see this. And that's coming in at plus 105. So pretty good odds there. I'm also taking Parma money line against Genoa. Again, I've been hot on Parma this entire season. I still like what they're doing regardless of where they've struggled. When they have struggled, it's been against some good teams. They got 4 draws in their last 5, which isn't great. But I think they're a much better team than Genoa. And I see this one going their way. They are also at home, and they have been a different animal at home. They've been very good, regardless of what they've done on the road. They're very good at home and a hard team to beat. This one's coming in at minus 120. And to round it out, I'm again putting my money where my mouth is. I'm taking AC Milan money line at Monza. Again, I think Monza is going to play into their hands. Regardless of how good the things I'm liking about Monza, it's going to bite them in the ass in this game. And that's coming at a minus 150, which brings the full Colpi. It's the Vos Colpi for Matchweek number 11 to plus 526. So not the fattest one, but I think it's some sensible bets with 3 money lines too, which we don't see very often. But with that, guys, I am done. If you have any comments, you can always reach out to us on any of the socials. We're at Calcio Culture FC. You're probably listening right now on YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We are on all 3. But with that, I am done. And I also need to sign myself off. So Paisanos, do not be a gagoots and force a Calcio Culture.